So I'm not gonna lie, I really expected it to be a little bit closer in the poll that I threw up on the community tab for the next low star saber I was going to cover. Like, I kind of knew that Fergus and Giles really didn't have a chance, but I expected the race to be at least a little bit closer between Bedivere and Jason over there, because they're both pretty popular. But nah, Bedivere just absolutely just slam dunked him into the ground. And so, well, we're going to go ahead and talk about him in today's video, which I'm kind of glad that I get to talk about him now, because I'm of the opinion that I think Bedivere is just the best low star saber you can get. There's a little bit of a debate to be had with like him or Jason, because Jason has a really good farming niche, and actually will specifically have a specific farming node that he's really good for in the near future in NA, and I mean in the near future. I'm talking within like a month or so, depending on when they actually drop the event, but we'll talk about him later. Right now, we got to talk about Bedivere, but before we begin, if you have not already, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. Also, I stream every weekday over on my Twitch starting at about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where recently we've been farming the new Japanese lotto, and we've also been getting absolutely crushed by the new challenge quest, so that's been a whole lot of fun. Anyway, let's go ahead and start by talking about Bedivere's hits. And yeah, you guys already know the general shtick that I'm going to go with. He's a year 1 low rarity servant, so his hits aren't exactly great. Although, again, with that very high natural NP gain at 1.11%, even those 2-hit quick cards and that 1 and 2-hit arts card are going to be enough as long as you're getting crits to kind of get him back to his next NP. The refund's not going to be anything super insane, unless you're actually like reinforcing it with like some NP gain buffs, but no one like Merlin or Koyenskaya is really going to do that for him, so you're going to be relying on crits, which will be fine, but it should be serviceable. Although I wouldn't expect him to be your main star gen with 10.2% star gen, and again, only 2 hits on the quick card, but as long as you can manage some crits on those hits, what with between Koyenskaya's second skill and Merlin's own NP and potential 20-30s that you do slap on your 2 supports, he should be fine enough. I think the reason his quick cards actually kind of gen a little bit more than you might expect on a crit is because he does actually have a passive 10% quick buff because of his writing skill. But really, there's not a lot to talk about when it comes to his hits, except he does have the 5-hit extra attack, which I'm not going to go into this field right now. I want to talk about his skills and I want to talk about his NP, so we'll save that for next time. Anyway, getting into his first skill, this guy's got a very strong first skill once you manage to go ahead and get this thing upgraded, because it's going to be giving the entire party 20% NP damage for 3 turns, as well as buff their NP generation rate by 30% for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. Consider this his charisma, but it's a bit better than a normal charisma, because when you pair him with people like Merlin, Merlin already gives you an attack buff, and that attack buff's going to multiply into this NP damage buff. And then with Koyenskaya, she's also going to be giving you like a special damage mod, plus the buster buffs they can give him, as well as the own buster buff he can give himself. You have a recipe for Bedivere to be able to do a lot of damage even at NP1, because all of those buff types are going to multiply into each other, as different buff types in FGO do not add into each other. When performing a damage calculation, they multiply into each other. And so it's actually kind of better in his case that his charisma functions with an NP damage buff. The other good thing is the NP generation rate, because if you're pairing him with someone like Merlin or Koyenskaya, they both want to get to their NPs, Merlin for the HP and stars, and Koyenskaya because while it does also contribute a little bit of damage, the overcharge on her NP actually refunds NP back into all of your other servants, kind of like the OG Tamamo. So by helping them get to their NPs, he's helping himself get to his own NP, do more crits, and also get a little bit of survivability from Merlin's own HP regeneration buff. Now, if you want to use double Koyenskaya, it's still pretty good because you're helping them get to their NPs, which means more NP for the boy Bedivere. And that's just his first skill. His second skill is pretty solid. It is a 30% NP gauge, as well as 50% mental debuff resistance for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. Consider the fact that he's also got a base 17.5% debuff resistance when it comes to specific mental debuffs, which are, stuns, charms, skill seals, stuff that would try to lock him down. He specifically against those has a 67.5% chance to go ahead and negate those. Don't get confused though, that debuff resistance applies to all of them, but the mental debuff resistance only applies to the set ones that are going to try to lock him down. So don't be like, oh yeah, I'm going to like totally whiff this attack buff or something over here. It's still very good because as a DPS servant, it's giving him more than a coin flip's chance to actually negate getting charmed or stunned, which are very annoying in challenge quests. Because you might be on your third turn of your buffs and you're like, okay, let me take advantage of these big crits that I got coming, and I just got charmed, so I'm not able to do any damage, and I completely waste those. He at least gives you a fighting chance to fight against those, and the 30% battery is really good not only for boss fights, but it actually makes Bedivere a solid option for some specific farming nodes, because Bedivere can actually do some really good damage, especially if you're lucky enough to snag him at NP5, because the only thing that's kind of holding this guy back is that he is a story locked servant. And so that might keep some people down on being able to get higher NP copies of him, but even at NP1, I hope I've showcased that he could still do some pretty decent damage. And this 30% battery can help him be good in farming nodes, because even if you're having to use someone like Waver or something, or even Merlin, right? Both of them can at least give him 20%, as they both give 20% to the entire party, plus his own 30% means he does actually have like a quote-unquote 50% battery in those cases. Or you could just level his append skill to level 10 to get that extra 20% starting gauge to give him that false 50% battery, and then in those situations he has a 70% battery, so that can actually be kind of nice. But regardless, the second skill is very, very strong, and he closes it out with his third skill. This is probably the one that they should go ahead and buff right here, because remember how I was talking about him having that mental debuff resistance? Well, he further reinforces that with a whole turn of 50% debuff resistance. Again, while this is up, his overall debuff resistance is at 67.5% in conjunction with the mental debuff resistance as well. And then he also gives the entire party 30% defense for a turn on a 5-turn cooldown. The problem is that in like modern FGO, you would prefer that these buffs at least be 3-turn, right? Because fights don't end that fast usually, and you might want to attach like some extra effect to this, like maybe just also give him like 30% crit damage on this. Maybe he drops like 10 stars a turn, he refunds 10% NP per turn, HP, something along those lines. Kind of depends on where they want to go with this. Do they want to make it a strictly like defensive utility skill? Then maybe he's able to like heal the entire party for like 1,000 for 3 turns or something. Just that little bit of extra defense that he's giving, maybe a little bit of damage cut as well. It's definitely strong if you need to like live a hit, or if you know that you're about to get smacked by some debuffs, you can at least bolster your entire party against all debuffs. But still, it being on a 1-turn cooldown is probably the weakest thing that he's got going for himself, but again, it still has some applicability. His NP thankfully got buffed, so this is also why he can kind of just do a lot of damage, because the buffed NP gives it buffed damage scaling, and then they also went ahead and technically buffed the overcharge. Now, it's not really going to come up in a lot of situations, because originally it was 30 to 70%, and now it's 30 to 90%, but I guess if you're able to hit like overcharge level 2, you can get that extra 5%, right? Instead of being a 40% buster buff, it's 45%. Keep in mind, this does apply for the entire turn, so any buster cards that follow his NP are going to get this buff for the entirety of the turn, and it does allow him that if something happens to your supports, if their own buffs are down or something along those lines, it does mean that he can double buff himself at the very least, because again, this buster buff is going to multiply into his first skill, which has the NP damage buff. And overall, Bedivere's just a really solid bungus servant, right? He's got some really solid mental debuff resistance, which is good for boss fights. The battery is good for challenge quests and for farming, which gives him double utility, especially because right now I feel a lot of people are experiencing the more weird nodes, even on NA and on JP, right? So it kind of shows you that having these guys that are just really good at being able to clear some just random really big enemy can be very, very useful. The first skill upgrade was also very, very nice in helping him be a bit more consistent, and also kind of buffing up his allies who really appreciate the NP gain buff, because usually all of the buster NPs are going to be really solid unless you're pairing him with Chen Gong for some reason, in which case getting Chen Gong to his NP faster while Bedivere's there might not be the best idea, because, well, let's not turn my boy into an RPG and slam him into the enemy. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think Bedivere is very, very solid, like just gold star, like free to play servant. Everyone gets a free copy of him for finishing Camelot, which Camelot should not be that hard for anybody at this point. You can literally bring friend supports and go clap it up, and I've been showing in the gameplay that even at NP1, this guy can put up some pretty decent numbers. So you can only imagine what he's capable of at NP5, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys in tomorrow's video where we're going to be talking about the long-awaited Sussy Man coming back to NAFGO, unless he doesn't actually release, and then this will be very embarrassing. But I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Peace.